if you want to be the best version of an emergency responder or first responder, whatever that is, in whatever industry, I think you being able to master and figure out how to apply that ratio and recognize what that takes and what that's done for you and how it's affected you. I think that's the key. It's not choosing one or the other.
So first, I'm going to start off with just what prompted you to get into firefighting in the first place? You kind of went into the medic world first, like you were going to do EMT and that first responder level.
My goal was to get on the fire department. I really enjoyed the medical side of things too. So I really have always wanted to do both. And I really think I know that during the time I worked as a medic, and I worked kind of in the same area. So being a medic and a firefighter helped me see the whole side of helping people in that area of emergency response from multiple different angles. So when I'm a medic and I was helping people, I knew what the firefighters were doing. I knew what they wanted, what they needed, what was best for their work, and vice versa. When I was a firefighter and I was running med calls, I was almost acting like a third medic or fourth medic on scene because I knew what they were doing. So it kind of gave me this overall picture of helping people in that way. So I think it made me better at both jobs, and then I've definitely carried that forward. I think it makes me a more well-rounded firefighter.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Scott, just so that we understand, so you guys don't run medics and firefighters. You're not in the same station.
It's been tried. I don't know if I've sort of gotten away from really looking into what places are doing it, but I think Winnipeg in Manitoba, they tried it for a while. So I don't know if there are areas in Canada that do both, that they run fire medics. It was talked about where I'm at, because we have like a regional paramedic service. So 3 different cities, are amalgamated, and that's the region paramedic service. But each city has its own fire department. But
Right.
there was talk about them coming under the same umbrella as the fire department. But there was obviously just politics around that. They have a different union
Right.
than we do, and you'd have to cut a lot of chiefs from the top and who runs what. So I think a lot of that killed it. We were trying to really push, way back when, because there was about 20 of us, I think, at the time that were medics on the side. And I worked at a technical rescue hall. So it really made sense to me, realizing, oh my God, like there's these high angle or confined space for, I guess those 2 in particular, where there's going to be times where the medics can't get in to be with the patient, and they're long calls. So you might be in a trench and it takes us a couple hours to get you out. Well, that's all well and good if you do a great job of getting the person out, but if they die while you're you haven't done the patient care, then what's the point? So
Right.
and even in car accidents, so there was a push kind of like from our side to like, well, maybe we don't have fire medics, but maybe the people that we have in our department that are also medics, maybe that for technical rescue calls, you could be what would be like a tech rescue medic. Right. So you would be able to be in the hole or with this patient and actually, keep them viable and really help them while the other work was being done. So we kind of approach it from that angle. And again, politics, I think, and everything got in the way, and unions and this and that. So it never really came to fruition. But
Imagine that.
yeah, so it might be done in other areas of the country, but I'm not quite aware of that.
Okay.
But I am fully aware of the American model of.
Yeah, that's standard. I mean, am I right, Leslie, saying that we have medics in the firefighter station? I mean, paramedics are in with the
Yeah,
firefighters.
it just depends, I think, on the
Right.
hospital system that's there in the area. Sometimes the medics run out of under the umbrella of the hospital systems.
Yep.
And then there's some stations that run medics. Again, it's probably just politics, probably follow the money to see who controls those.
Or they're in the same station and you're detailed to the ambulance for a shift, and then you're detailed to the engine for a shift, and you're detailed to the patrol for a
Right.
shift. So there's all different models out there that people work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So probably people are wondering, like, what the hell are we talking about right now? We have firefighters, and this is bullets to bedpans, and why the hell are we here? So let me kind of catch you up, because we were all just having a
Yeah,
good
why the hell am I
conversation.
here?
Why Scott doesn't even know why he's here. He's like, geez, I just showed up. So we have Scott Hewlett with us. He's a Canadian firefighter. Now, I am going to say he's the other Canadian, because my family is from Quebec. That's like the real Canada. And then there's the rest of Canada. So
Debatable.
Yeah.
So he's been a firefighter for 25 years. That's what we were talking about. Like, how did he start and all this? 6 years, started off as a paramedic, and then he decided full force, let's go firefighting. And what we're going to talk about today really is his journey, because he's also a podcaster. It's called Multiple Calls Podcast. Been doing it for 5 years, and it explores the journey of firefighters through storytelling. And, our executive director, Cindy, actually said, "Hey, have you seen this before?" I said, "No, let me check it out." And I thought it was really cool. And so I reached out to Scott and I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, what are we talking about?" I'm like, "That's a good question." But I think what we need to talk about is firefighters. I'm going to umbrella this. Firefighters
Right.
are way more healthier than medical people in general. Y'all got your own calendar. I mean, come on. Are you on a calendar? That's what Leslie and I want to know. Like, are you March? Like, what month are
First
you?
question.
I may or may not have early in my career.
Okay. We're gonna have to do some research.
We're gonna do. They have
They don't do those
archives.
anymore, but they were all for charity. It was for fundraising.
Were you holding a puppy dog?
It was for the children.
You were holding. What do you what do you quantify as a child?
Yeah.
Do
No, I
four-
mean raising money for them.
Everybody's a child at heart, Scott.
There's no ego involved. It was all for fundraising.
I'm sure there was no ego. Were you holding a puppy or a kitten?
At no point did I hold a puppy or kitten. But let's just sidebar here for a second. For the first time in my career, after all these years, just a couple shifts ago, I legitimately saved a cat out of a tree.
Good.
Hey,
I got that bingo stamp.
yay!
Got the bingo
Yes.
stamp. I have the pictures to prove it.
You
It
are an
was,
official
quite the experience.
firefighter.
Yeah.
It took this
25
long,
years.
but it finally happened. Right?
You have the
Made
calendar
the grab.
and you saved the kitten. You're official. We're good now.
Right.
Now Leslie and I are going to go try to find the calendar. Wait, what month were you? Now I want to know that. What month were you?
There was a few different ones, but different time and place, different department, different culture. It was,
I think we should
have society.
I think we should have another charity event. Okay. I
It
digress.
was all good. It was all good fun, and actually, on all honesty, it raised quite a bit of money for local charities. So it was a fun thing that also did some great things.
I'm sure it raised a lot of money. I have no doubt that the people we're simple. They say men are simple, women can be just as simple, or other guys.
I
I
would
mean,
agree.
other guys, whatever. But yes.
Yeah. So I didn't quite answer your question. You were saying about that you feel that firefighters in general fear than in the medical. So
I think so.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it was that would necessarily be driven by the type of people that get into the job are healthier or more unhealthy. I think it's the setup and the culture, like just the how the job is done, and so we talked earlier on about fire medics and fire technicians. So maybe their lifestyle is a bit closer to what the actual firefighters work culture is, but I just know from my experience, and now it's even more so now. You spent a lot of time just in the ambulance, sitting upright, and then driving around. A lot of patient lifting, a lot of wait times at hospitals, a lot of just if you weren't a type of person that would like prep food and have food with you, you're just grabbing what you can.
Right.
You as a firefighter, it depends on the department you work in, and I'm sure it's regional with medics too, but how much sleep you would get at night overnight if you get a chance, if you run off your feet. So I think a lot of things are stacked against paramedics, and even, I would say even more so with police, that the deck is kind of stacked against you to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And so even if you are doing quote unquote all the right things, I think, you could probably suffer more so in a number of areas with those two jobs versus the firefighting, just because of the setup of the work in and of itself. So I wouldn't say it's the type of people that get in the job are healthier or unhealthier, because we all have examples of different personalities in all careers. I think it's more of the style of work and the expectations.
Well, and then go one step further and go into the hospital, where, I was a flight nurse and then I also worked in a hospital, and it was
Right.
vastly different. I mean, we had our own gym. We had a little more, it was crazy hours still, but we had a little
Right.
more focus on the health. And you go in the hospital. Leslie, you worked in the hospital. I worked in the hospital. And geez Louise, I mean, some days peeing's a luxury. I'm all like, okay, I
Yeah.
can just hold it for 20 more seconds here. And food,
Right.
the running joke always is like every manager is just like, you can't have food at the nurse's station. You can't have drinks at the nurse's station. Like, what do you
Mhm.
want us to do? Right. So I agree. By
Right.
design, we're not setting
Mhm.
ourselves up for success.
And what really highlighted that, I think, was COVID, right? I mean,
Oh
it was
yeah.
hard. It was hard for everybody in the emergency services, but really medics and the hospitals. I mean, that goes without saying, but it's that really showed the stark difference of work and the demand and how hard it is and the relentlessness of it, I think, um, of the differences in the careers. So they're
Yeah.
very similar. And like I was talking about before, there were similarities on calls where I was beneficial in a number of ways, knowing of both jobs operationally, but definitely functionally as a career, we can see that there's really big differences. Yeah.
I think as a team though, Scott, when you're going on a call, you
Mhm.
kind of hold each other, your brothers, to a little bit of a higher standard than I say that we do in the hospital settings as far as their physical expectations, because you're dependent on that person to be physically fit when the time comes and you need them in that situation. Whereas in the hospital setting, that's not necessarily a focus.
I would like to. I would like to believe that overall that is true in the majority. I don't
Okay.
think it's definitely not. We are just the same differences in lifestyles and personal self-care are pretty much the same across most industries, and I think we're no different. So I know from the outside, I think that's something I'd really like people to know too. Like from the outside, let me look, say it this way. So when I first came on at 23, I kind of had this, even though my dad was in it and I had some sort of sense of what it was really like, I really didn't know what it was like. So
Right.
when I finally got on at 23 and the curtain was pulled back, I kind of had this idea that everyone's going to be this certain way, right? Not
Right.
exactly the same, but this certain way. There was going to be this common arc.
They all look
And
like
I
they should be
honestly,
on the calendar, right?
but I kind of I kind of got disillusioned, disenchanted. Like, the curtain was pulled back and you find out that the what the who the wizard really is. And but then I just chose to align myself with the people that I wanted to emulate and be like. And I've had my own journey, my own path along the way too. I'm not saying that I've been all in all the time throughout my entire career. I've had my path, but I feel like there's been this this movement upward and progressing and improving and trying to do my best through my career. um, but as I got older, I just realized, well, this is just every industry. There's pilots that you would think pilots are like this, and nurses are like this, and you think doctors are like this, and psychologists are like this. But you really do understand it's just people. It's people, and they're the same in every industry. And you're going to have the way I've read it about it and heard it said is that you have your A, B, and C players, right? You have your A players. You never ever have to like push. You never have to try and inspire and motivate. They're the ones that are inspiring and motivating. They're pushing the envelope. They're the ones that are challenging administrations and training and trying to like move the needle. And then you get your C players that are basically they're presenteeism, right? They show up, they may be in uniform and they're around, but they're not necessarily keen on being there. And then you got your B players, which is the majority of whatever your service is. So even as an instructor, the way I was reading it was, teach to the B's. You should always teach to the B's. Like just focus on that. You'll never change the C's. You don't have to motivate the A's. Just teach to the B's. But that's 85 or 90 more percent of your department is that, and then you've got your small percentage of C's and A's. So I think that would probably be true. I would hazard a guess across all industries. That's just the way people are. And then obviously people can move from C to B to A. Like
Right.
you're not just stuck at the C your whole career. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. But if you had to take a snapshot today of an industry, you probably have those three categories. I don't know what you think about that, but that's been my experience.
Well, I don't disagree. I completely agree actually. But I think one of the compounding or big compounding factor is when the stress happens, right? How do we cope with it? So
Mhm.
when you take A, B, or C and you split that down and add stress to it, and some of those A's, they're going to be coping with alcohol, they're going to be coping with drugs,
Yeah.
they're going to be coping with sex, whatever. Other A's are going to be coping with healthy eating, fitness, that kind
Hmm.
of thing. And same with the B's and same with the C's, right? If I
Sure.
had to it would be an interesting study to see how many, the percentage of each in each category. You know what I mean? Like I would
Yeah.
theoretically
And
like
it's
to think C's would have more people that are running to alcohol, but I don't know about that. There's a lot of silent copers out there, high functioning, that can hide it for a long time.
oh no, like when I talk about the A, B's, and C's, I mean more of like engagement in the job.
No, I understand that. I was just
So
making
yeah,
that like
awesome.
when stress
Yeah,
comes on
no, you're
top of
absolutely
it,
right.
how did
Mhm.
they all cope with that? So,
Oh, just because someone's an A and they're fully engaged in the job doesn't mean they're not struggling, and that they have great self-care,
right.
and then you add on the thing, you add on that saying that I believe is kind of true, that 20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Yes.
And and high performers just get more work because they
Yes.
get
Right.
stuff done. Like that's true in offices. Again, this is true across, and this is just, we're talking about people. We're just talking about people, right?
Yeah.
So you're right. There are people that are looking like they're doing great, and they drive hard, but then in 5 years, maybe they were an A player, and then they slide. Or maybe a C player gets their act together in their personal and work life, and they gradually and improve for a number of years. So and they could end up being an A player at the end of their career. It's not, you're not stuck. It's, again, it's just that snapshot. I think it's a way to frame engagement in the job. It's a way to frame, like, maybe where am I at right now in my career, reflecting on, were there times where I was a C player? Were there times where I was a B player? What can I celebrate? Were there times where I was an A player? Are there times I can celebrate when I was a C player and I survived and I made it long enough to, make it through my career? Like,
Right.
again, I think reflection and perspective is everything.
When you're younger, like I remember when I was a young nurse, I worked on the step down cardiac unit,
Mm.
and and actually I wasn't even a nurse. I was in nursing school and I worked on this floor. And I would go in and have to prep people for cardiac caths. So I would have to go shave and do the talks and all that.
Mhm.
And then when they came back from surgery, whether it was their cath or whether they had open heart or whatever they had, I would have to go in and help do some of the education, right? And as I was learning, I would go in with other nurses. Let me tell you, we had a very robust figured group of women, as mostly women, that worked up there. And I would be jaw dropped to watch them walk in there and tell them, don't eat this. You need to get
Do
moving.
you say not as I do? Yeah.
Right. All this
Mhm.
stuff. And then they come out, grab their cigarette, grab their donut, and go on a smoke break. And I looked at that at, 20 years old, and I'm like, how the hell can you do that? And there's still part of me that still thinks that, but now a little couple, many decades older, I look at that now and I think, gosh, what kind of stress have they put under that they're not able to take care of themselves? That amount of
Sure.
stress on them that is causing them to eat their emotions, smoke their emotions, who knows, drink their emotions,
Mhm.
whatever's going on. It's as we're older, we're wiser, and I look at that same person and now my heart breaks versus what the hell's your problem? Which was my thought at 20, right?
Yeah, and then we know more than we ever have now about how lack of sleep affects, and then hormone
Oh,
levels,
yeah.
and
Cortisol
how that,
levels. Hmm.
all of that, how that affects weight gain. So I think this is a great opportunity to sort of frame this as, and this is kind of how I've come now to frame the job that I do, is that, and this is where the tough plus love idea comes from, I've heard it said a number of ways, but the way I frame it is kind of tough plus love. You can have this, well, suck it up. It's like, this is what the job calls for. Like, you're called, this is what the community expects of you. Catch jobs, not feelings. There's all these kind of sayings out there, right?
Hmm.
And then you could have the other side, is like, which would be classified as a snowflake, right? Idea of like, well, everyone's, your emotions matter, and you need to, like, you're not expected to have grit. It's on the other end of the spectrum. I
Right.
always tend to think of like, okay, it very much in culture, there's always divisiveness, and there's a spectrum of like, one end and the other. For me, it's like, I believe you can be both. So I believe you can,
Yeah.
and like you said, like, I can hold myself and understand the reality of what's expected of me, and then do everything, and I am expected to live up to that. But it doesn't mean I can't also understand my emotions, understand how to process them, understand how to regulate my nervous system, speak to, family and friends, speak to counselors, address myself as a whole human being. So, we are armed now, I think, with way more information than we ever were when I got on. So I think it's probably different in the nursing now too, right? You'll see that people have it at their fingertips, but even though you have the information, do you have the time? Do you have the energy because of the sleep? What is the stress doing to you? So
Do you
yeah,
have the
how long can you
support?
stay in the career? What's
Well,
that?
and do you have the support? Actually, this came up in
100%. Yeah.
podcast that Leslie and I talk about. So, the title of our podcast is Bullets to Bedpans. I was a military nurse for 21 years,
Mhm.
and the military is trying to figure that out right now. Like how to go from grit to grace, right? Like that was a tagline on you, Leslie. That's her
Thank
Instagram. And so how to go from that tough, we're deployed, we are nothing. We're an asset. We have got to get a mission done. And the only thing that matters is that we get that mission done. End of
Mhm.
story. We'll deal with ourselves later. Right. And when I say later,
Right.
it like retirement. And the military is learning that doesn't work so well because we're
you.
burning them out. We're putting money
Mhm.
into them. They're leaving early,
Mhm.
or they're worse, and they're coming out with less quality of life. How do we do this better? And it's very hard. It's hard when we're like, we have a mission, you sign on the dotted line, get your shit done. And then we're like, oh, but if you're really struggling, you can go see mental health, but will you be ready in time to deploy? I mean, that's the energy, you know what I mean?
Right,
So,
and then the police very much deal with that as well because obviously they have a gun, right? And
right,
they're
Yeah.
so
right,
well, no, they're like so the military, but I mean that like
right,
the police are within our society and they have guns among the people. So
correct.
the minute you say mental health, it's like okay,
Yeah.
give us a gun, right? So I'm just making an assumption from an outside perspective, but I believe that's probably pretty fair that people are reluctant
Oh,
to
very much
address these
so.
parts of themselves because of that, right? And just because you are dealing with some things in your life doesn't mean you can't do your job all the time. So
Right.
so when I talk about this spectrum, when I talk about this tough plus love, like the way I've also sort of framed it is like the idea of like a connected warrior. So yes, I'm a warrior, but yes, I'm connected to myself and to other people and empathy, compassion. I think you can be both. So I see it situationally. So if I go to a certain type of incident or call, this incident or call requires a ratio of tough and a ratio of love. Maybe it's 80-20, right? And then another one might require 80-20 the other way, or maybe this one's 50-50. There's things in my life and at work that require 100% grit, right?
Yeah.
It's just 100% grit, get it done. There's moments I've had in my career that require 100%, vulnerability and emotion and empathy and connection. So what I'm saying is, I think if you want to be the best version of an emergency responder or first responder, whatever that is, in whatever industry, I think you being able to master and figure out how to apply that ratio and recognize what that takes and what that's done for you and how it's affected you. I think that's the key. It's not choosing one or the other. So
Yeah.
both. Like it doesn't excuse you from having to this job is blue collar, it is dirty, and it is, it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
They call
Right.
it firefighting, not fire easy, right?
Not
That
fire
is like
loving.
right. But you are there for people, and I've also helped a large number of people by emotionally connecting with them on scenes, and especially people that are dying or have just died. And
Hmm.
then we could also talk about I've framed it before as, it's an opportunity given to me to be there for people and care for them and love them, maybe in moments where their loved ones are not there to love them.
Right.
So I need to be the type of person that if that person's loved ones can't be there for them, I need to be there in their stead to love that person and be with them, whether they survive or not, in the way that that person would love them. So that's how far I kind of take it, and that kind of stuff gives me chills. But that's what I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but that's what I'm trying to get to.
And I think that you were able to put that into words perfectly, that that's something that the general public doesn't understand that we have to do. Number one, we have to be very good at our jobs, very
Mm,
skilled, very trained. But like
mhm,
you said, it oftentimes takes us out of that realm, and we have to be emotional support for people, and we have
mhm.
to love on people, and that's not necessarily in our job description. So that's asking more of us emotionally, that I think the general public doesn't understand, that that's something that we do every day.
That's a really great point. So I think I would pull it two things on that is that I don't think we necessarily have to do it. I think when you're doing technical parts of the job appears to get done, and people don't notice if you are empathetic or emotional.
Right.
Maybe the person does, maybe if a bystander or family member might, but I'm just saying in general, if the fire went out and the person got cut out of the car, no one's going to notice if I was emotionally, either overtly or internally there for that person. So I don't necessarily think you have to do it. I think it's a choice, right? And then again, just saying that we say that our goal would be to do it daily, but I don't necessarily have it in me every single day. So I have that desire to do it, but given what you were just saying earlier about stress and what's going on in your personal life, so if you're not going to be doing it perfectly every day.
Yeah.
But I think it's what you're looking for is to always have this guidepost that you can look to. Okay, like this is what's going on in my life. I wasn't the best person on that call. I was maybe 50% good, and then trying to recalibrate to get back to be able to be that person that can be emotionally there for somebody. So it's not like you get to a place and it's like I do both perfectly all the time now for the rest
Right.
of my career. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, it's important to have these conversations so you have this frame of reference and perspective that you're always kind of recalibrating and trying to get back to that place again.
You know what I think of? I think of jujitsu or martial arts in general. My kids did it for a short time, and my cousin's husband does jujitsu. It's really awesome. Just have him try it. And some of the best teachers I had ever seen, that whole thing, tough plus love versus tough love, right? Tough plus love. And that's what they were. They set really solid boundaries. They made them give their all when they're in their training. As soon as they either choked somebody out or arm barred them or whatever they did, and they tapped out, they immediately had them shake hands. Everybody okay? And then we're back. If there was any discipline that needed to happen, which usually resulted in push-ups or something, there was no screaming at them. It was like, hey, give me 10. Like it was just such a positive environment for such a, what you're doing. You're kicking each other's ass, and you're throwing each other on the ground and you're rolling and this and that. And it's kind of like that, that whole tough plus love. I love that concept. Like that.
Yeah, I think it's what you're speaking to is and I've said this recently in a clip I posted that it's a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
So those kinds of people that are in that community see what they're doing as a growth opportunity. It's an opportunity for them to grow as a person. It's an opportunity for them to grow as a mentor of other people. It's just always about learning and growing and accepting and understanding and being able to improve as a person and imperfectly.
You said something, Leslie, that kind of made me go back a little bit, is that we were saying, like, it's not in our job description, right? Like, we're there to treat the patient, to, save the patient, right? Whether we're doing it as a firefighter, paramedic, whether we're a nurse, RT, whoever it is, we have a specific skill set that we have to perform in order for that person to hopefully come out healthy and recover, right? But I will contend that maybe it's not necessarily in our hard skill set. It would behoove us to work on it, like you were saying, Scott, to always work on this tough plus love, because unless you've seen it, somebody's freaking out. It's not the patient, but it's a family member. And if we're just negating them, we're going to have a bigger problem on our hand. I mean, we have somebody that's like freaking out and nobody is addressing that. We could have a whole different situation going on. And it takes sometimes a lot less than what we realize. Like, I understand you're scared. It is okay to be afraid, but I need to have my attention here. Boom, right? That people get that stuff. When I've seen big problems happen is when we don't take those 10 seconds to say, I see you, I hear you, I understand, I need to give my attention here. I will be back with you in a minute. Go ahead.
So in regards to that, so I actually asked a question on my social media, and something that was brought up was that the biggest issue in healthcare, I'd asked it pertaining to healthcare, was that what we do to each other. So in regards to that, we're doing that, saying that we should be fostering that type of relationship with our patients, with the people that are on scene. How well are we doing that amongst each other?
What, Scott, let me ask, I'm going to throw that at you, because to me, from the outside, when I look at firefighters, and it's only usually when I nearly set a fire, so forgive me, but
Or
um
looking through your calendars.
yes,
Or
or we're looking
calendars.
at our calendars, one of
I'm
those
gonna get
two.
one. I'm gonna hang it right up
From what I've
there.
understood very early on.
Do not underestimate Leslie.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. We digress.
We're
We digress.
digressing again. But
When
what
you think
like
of firefighters.
yeah, when I see a firefighter, I see them, cool, calm, collective, coming into the scene,
Mhm.
handling what they need. And I personally think they're always very friendly because they have to be out in a community. They're
Mhm.
kind of like the police, right? They got to be out
Mhm.
there and they're engaging and stuff like that. What is it inside behind the curtain? What is it that Oz is seeing? Like, what is it really like? Because nurses, we
Yeah, I mean
already know
that
that
this
whole eat their own culture. What is it with firefighters?
yeah, this touches back to what I was saying earlier, and yeah, for sure we can expand on it. But I think the different types of people that you see in other industries, you see in firefighting as well. So if you look around and there's people in the job where I'm like, why are you here? You don't even like people, you don't want to help people, or there's people in the job for the money, for the benefits, for the schedule, like you name it, there's people in it for the wrong, there are people in it for the wrong reasons. That doesn't paint the brush as like everybody is,
Right.
but I can't paint the for you to say that everybody is, living up to this fantastical, romantic movie ideal that you have of them as well. So if the curtains pull back, it's like, well, you're just looking at people, right? That's just in general, how people are. So one thing I've come to learn too over the years, and I didn't come up with the saying, but it's another thing, this quote that sort of touches, um, you know, me in a deep way is that don't expect everyone to like you because you don't like everybody. So just because we're in this brotherhood, sisterhood, family of the fire service doesn't mean that everybody likes me and I like everybody and we get along. Like you don't hang out with everybody in your neighborhood. You don't like everybody in your neighborhood. We
Right.
have different perspectives. We're not all friends, but we would hope, again, I would hope that when we do go to the job that we're all, none of us even think about any of that other stuff and we do our job. And then that's where the tough plus love comes in of it, like the understanding and the love part of like, well, I may not, may not want to hang out and have coffee, but I'm not going to think twice if I have to help you on a call, or if you're in a bad spot. But the tough part of it would be not everybody is meant for the job, and if you don't care about it and you're not, trying to be the best you can, that not only affects you personally, but it affects me as your coworker and it affects the
Very
people that we're
true.
going to help.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if there is this matter of fact thing that even if there's people that you do like as a person, like I may think you're a great human being, but you're not fit for the job. Like
Mhm.
that's okay. Like
That is
I'm not meant to be a surgeon. I'm not meant to be a police officer. I'm not good at, I'm not meant to be whatever job you want to name. Like there's a lot of stuff I'm either crappy at, right? Or I
Mhm.
don't have the intellectual capacity to do. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean that I should just automatically get the job that I just choose to get because I want it and I want
right.
whatever it comes with it. There is that hard fact of like this job requires A, B, C, and D. It's not debatable. And if you're not going to live up to that, then then we should be able to question that. I don't think we're able to
Right.
necessarily question that as much as we probably were in the past, but
Right.
that's a whole other rabbit hole. But anyways, I hope that paints a picture of like as human as the people are in your areas, it's exactly the same with us,
Yeah,
right? And
I get that concept. I taught the most when I was a flight nurse. Like we had to, and we were fixed wing. So, and we were in Europe and flying all over the place. And there were people there that I'm sure didn't care for me, and I didn't necessarily care for them. Personality wise, we didn't resonate. Probably the easier way to say it.
mhm,
But when shit was hitting the fan, and we all had to go do a mission, we all came together. There was no
mhm,
argument. I mean, then
mhm,
we'd debrief afterwards if there was an issue or whatnot, and then we'd go off and do our own thing again. We could come
sure.
together. As the one thing I could say in that unit, I didn't necessarily resonate with everybody, and I'm
Mhm,
sure likewise, but when it was all going down, we were all jumping on board together. There was no question, and we trusted each
mhm.
other to get the job done. So,
Yeah, and there's a level of performance that's required, and I think we also need to overlay that. There's another quote that sticks with me is that I'm I'm made up of I think it's I'm made up of flaws stitched together with good intentions,
Right.
right?
mm,
I'm fully made up of flaws
that's
stitched
a good
together with
one.
good intention. So I think as long as we have Now, okay, let's add to that. You can be flawed and have good intentions, but not be able to perform. So I should be accept on the love end of things that I'm flawed and stitched together with good intentions, but good intentions also don't get the job done. So
Right.
you
Yes.
should also be able to perform. So again, I would hope that everybody would be able to come together and like just make the incident go perfectly. But if you do have people that are, they're flawed, they're human, just like us, and we're not perfect. We're doing it imperfectly, but as best we can. But we are able to perform and reflect on our mistakes and try and get better. But I think there are, like I said, I think there are people that just aren't able to perform under stress. Maybe they can perform in training, but they can't perform under stress. So I get that. That's real talk. I think it's what you're driving at is like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the reality, as
Right.
opposed to just making a blanket statement about, um, how people are within certain industries.
And I think to speak that I think there's a lot of people who get into these lines of work and then just mentally aren't able to process the situations that they are in. And when I do my trauma work, I tell people, maybe the job is still going to be there. The job is still going to be there. And if, unfortunately, if we're not able to maintain our wellness and do the job, perhaps we
Mhm.
should find another job. And that's
Right.
kind of that tough plus love, I guess, that we
Mhm.
can say, because a lot of people want to, blame the job for their lack of mental wellness. And your mental wellness needs to be your number one priority.
That's a good
Yeah,
point, though.
you need to have a long term. I want to say you need to have a long term perspective on the career. But I think another thing I've come to realize recently is that perhaps I only have, it's because firefighting and Navy police, maybe it would be seen as these are few careers where you think of it as a career. It's 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other jobs out there, it's like you do something for 5 years, another thing for 5 years, another for 10 years. You're kind of bouncing around. Even CEOs and chiefs, like they're kind of like they're moving around, right? But
Right.
there's very few jobs where we now think you get into it and you do it and you retire and you get your plaque and you ride off in the sunset. So I think I've come to realize that maybe it's okay for you to, realize that when you try to get into the job and you get the job, that's not for you. I
Right.
think you should be an adult enough to realize that and then leave the job and find something else. But now you're in the job, now you got the benefits, now you got the schedule, now you got all the perks and you don't want to let it go. So you
Right.
stay. So that's not good. Or B, you are able to perform, you are meant to do the job, but maybe you have 5 years in you. Maybe you've got 10 years in you. Maybe you've got 15. Maybe you've got 30. But it's okay if you reach a limit at 15 and it's not seen as a failure. Now, the job itself, the supports around that, if we want to just, put this theoretical thing for conversation's sake in like this perfect world, if we're all given what if we're all giving ourselves and we're given what we need for this, thought experiment, maybe you still only have 5, 10, 15, 20 years in you. That's what you have to give. And then maybe you would be best for you and everyone else if you were doing another job.
Right.
Obviously, the job itself and the lack of support and all these things could shorten that time period for even someone that was meant to do 30 years. And we don't all make it through.
Well, that's
I'm
true.
just trying to open up that conversation of like, it's okay to only have 15 years in you and try to find something else for you and everyone else. I'm saying it's not seen as a failure. And I don't think less of you as a person if you can't do the 30. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's
Right.
an important concept because that's one thing I've said in the past. The military, where I notice the people that hold the tightest to that military culture, like after they get out of the military, are the people that don't finish their careers. So,
Right.
I just went to like a veteran breakfast and I'm sitting there talking with people and these people are wearing the hat, they've got the pins, and it's great. I am fine with all of it, right? I am usually incognito. Most people kind of raise an eyebrow when I said I was a 21-year, retired nurse. They're
Sure.
just like, really?
Sure.
It's all good. But what I notice out of that, there's a large portion of them that did 4 years, that did 6 years, 8 years. They didn't finish the career. And
Mhm.
they still have, I don't know, and I'm not speaking for anybody. I don't know if it's a fear, I'm not fear, but if it's fear of failure or there's shame, there's guilt. I didn't
Mhm.
finish,
Mhm.
like kind of what you were getting at.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
Um, one guy, it was a Navy guy, and he said, I was in for 4 years. I deployed 3 times. It was during Vietnam, and he goes, "I deployed
Right.
3 times, and they were gonna send me out for a 4th, and I couldn't do it." Well,
Right.
shit,
Which is
dude.
fine.
You just
Not
had a whole
really.
military career in 4
Right.
freaking years. That's
Yeah.
what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is where, okay, a couple things. This is where I see people very often want to say, how long you been on, or how long you been doing the job?
Right.
And I get it. It's a conversation piece.
Right.
Maybe perhaps it frames something, but I've heard some great instructors say, and it's sunk in with me, and I've had to reflect on it myself too, that years on the job does not mean any. It doesn't mean it. Okay, it means something, but what they're trying to frame it as and trying to put you in this hierarchy of like, oh,
Yeah.
you've been on 25, but I've been on 5. It's like, where have you been on 5 years?
Right.
What
Exactly.
Exactly.
have you done in 5 years? What have you
Yeah.
done in 25? If you've done the first year 30 times and your first year was crap, how is that compared to someone that works in a different city and they run jobs? They run like 3 fires, a shift
Yeah.
for 30 years. Like
Well,
that's
Right.
vastly different. So what have I done in my career and
right.
how has that affected me? And I think if you we should be grateful to people and still be proud of them and hold them up if they've been in whatever job they're in and they've done it to the best of their ability. And I think they should be able to be proud of that. The other thing that I think of when you're talking about this too is that a great thing that the emergency services and military and all that do is if and again you want to have real talk. So let's have real talk. Is that if you have no self-esteem and no identity, they'll give you one.
Oh, yeah.
Like they'll tell you who you are, and all of
That
a sudden,
is
and
an
if you've never
absolute
had
yes.
yeah, if you've never had self-esteem, and all of a sudden, this is the thing, you've never had much self-esteem or self-identity, and you get the job, you put the uniform, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, thanks for your service, and you're so amazing." And it's like,
Mhm.
boom, your ego goes off like an airbag. Well, I must be great. Everyone's telling me I'm great. It's
Yes,
like, well,
right.
you've been here for a cup of coffee, and you've done nothing, and you automatically think you're great because you're wearing a uniform. So again,
Dude,
I
it's
want to have the
true.
real talk of like, let's tear it all down to reality. Like,
That's why we have stolen
you,
valor people. I mean, they want
Yes.
so you
that
need,
that
yeah,
Yes.
so
look.
you need to have self-awareness, self-perspective, understand why you're in it, reflect, right? Question that, challenge it, flip it around, and just always be checking in with yourself as you're growing. Like, am I in this for the right reasons?
Yeah.
Who do I think I am? When I don't have the uniform on, what am I? When I leave this job, what am I? I think that would keep you honest. But if some people lock on to like every time I walk out the door, I've got something fire related on my head or my body.
Yeah.
Because I want people to know when I'm going to get a coffee that I'm a firefighter so that they see me a certain way.
It's
Right.
on
And then,
everyone's vehicle. Every
yeah, I mean,
firefighter's vehicle.
Yeah.
so I mean, I have a fire sticker on. I have one on the front, one on the
I
back.
was
Like a
just
very
gonna
small
ask
one,
you.
yeah, no, I do. And I'll speak to it because I'm not, I'm saying this, so I've got one on the front, and on the back, and it's for me, it's almost like that community thing. Like
Right.
when I'm driving around and I see another vehicle, again, it doesn't mean that I'm 100% gonna like align with that person, but it's like, oh, I know they're part of my community.
Right.
Right.
Right. Or they stop at an accident and they pull up and I'm already at the accident and I'm off duty.
They
And it's like,
know.
okay, I know that at least there's a possibility that they're a firefighter and I know I kind of have an idea what they're about.
Right.
But
Right.
I think I have those 2 stickers on my vehicle. I will wear a hat or represent, I wear a shirt. It's like, oh, I'll never put it on. I don't want people to know what I do. And there's that whole thing about how do you know you're talking to a firefighter, I don't know, at a party? And it's like, well, they told you 12 times.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to mistake pride in yourself and in the job and pride in trying to represent this calling properly
Right.
with trying to pump up your ego. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think as long as you have that in your mind, your perspective, and you're aware of that, then you're probably doing what you're doing for the right reasons versus not thinking about it at all. And you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. You're
Yeah.
probably wearing the shirt for the wrong reasons. You're probably bringing it up for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And you can play with that, right? You can play with it, like you said, going incognito. And I don't drive into work with my uniform on anymore. And even though I have the sticker on my car, I don't drive in uniform, and I drive home in my civilian clothes too, because it's almost like, now you're at work and now you're not. But the other thread we can pull on with that is I honestly feel like this job just lets me be who I am and I get paid for it. like I feel like I had it in me to, before I was a firefighter, and now when I'm off duty and when I leave the job, if I come across something, I'm going to stop and I'm going to help. Like
Right.
if I get fired tomorrow, it doesn't stop me being who
Right.
I am. That's what I'm trying to drive at here. Like I really, in my heart of hearts, feel like this job is not an identity that I've taken, that other people have earned, and I've just taken it and then now I'm just going to use it. I feel at this point I realize that it's in my core. It's like who, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. But you get what I'm saying? Like the calling's within
Right.
my core. So it's
Yeah,
who I am.
I
So I don't
totally
mind
agree.
representing that identity because it's who I
Yeah.
am.
It's a camaraderie, and I say this, I do public speaking, and I always say that there's a camaraderie within these groups that, again,
Mhm.
the general public doesn't understand, because we are in situations together
Mhm.
that we may never speak of again. But to your point, you form these friendships, and just you share something with these individuals that people working normal desk jobs just don't understand. They don't understand. So it's like you can walk up to anyone that works in a hospital setting, that works in fire service, and you automatically have a camaraderie with them that, that is just, it's not understandable to people outside of those fields of work. So I
Yeah,
totally agree.
it's kind of like an icebreaker, a conversation starter. It's that
Right.
nod. It's like what's the motorcycle wave as you're driving by. It's the
Right.
Jeep
Yeah.
thing. It's like this we community and tribe. Sebastian Unger, I believe it is, the wrote book. He wrote the book Tribe. Speaks to that tribe, community, importance of social
Yeah.
connections. But I believe if I was a police officer, I would align with people in the as a police
Yeah.
officer. And when I worked as a medic, I made the same kind of friendships as I made with people I have in the fire service. So it's not a firefighter thing, it's not a cop thing, it's not a medic thing, it's a people thing.
Let me
Yeah.
ask this. Let me
I
turn it a
agree.
little bit. So we in the military, we're getting better with mental health care, military medical, we're trying to be better. And I say try because it's not overly successful. And when I say military mental health, I'm talking specific like medical people getting mental health care, right?
Mhm.
And Leslie and I have talked about this in the past. That in the civilian world, uh, is it's not it's sort of encouraged, but it's not highly encouraged. So I'm wondering in the firefighter world, because everybody's trying to work towards normalizing it. And I'll say it's better
Mhm.
than it used to be, but there's still a ways to go. So in the firefighter community, how are they doing that? Is it more normalized? Is it,
Well, it's funny because the first thought I thought of when you were speaking of this is that the bigger the mountain gets, the more cracks there are to fall through. So
that's a good one.
I hadn't really framed it that way before, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll use that at some point again. That I think as departments and conglomerates or corporations, the military is like the biggest of the big. When you really pan out, there's a lot of cracks for people to fall through. So it gets harder and harder for jobs, industries, businesses, the military, to give everybody what they need. I also think that we can't always pin it on the job. That we have to realize as human beings, you come into the job at 23 or 30 or 40, you bring a lot. There's no one comes in as a blank slate. So
Yeah.
if I have mental health issues, if I have self-care issues, if I've got all that, I'm showing up day one with all of that. I'm not a blank slate. I was perfect, and if I hadn't got this job, I never would have been damaged. What I'm saying is that I think you come in with the stuff you come in with, and then the job can exacerbate that, and the
Yeah.
job definitely can just drive you into the ground. That's 100% true. I think it's funny because in Canada, the program was called Road to Mental Readiness. It's now called the Working Mind, I believe. That actually started with the military. And then it was brought to the police service and adapted for them. And then it was brought to the fire service. My department specifically has had a peer support team since 1994. So I think we're really
Wow.
ahead of the game of like pushing.
Mhm.
What does
this
that look like
message.
when you say peer support? I'm just curious what that setup looks like.
Yeah, I mean it's changed as over the years as
Right.
education and training and awareness and all that have, but always with the intent of it's non-divisional, so it's not like, well, it's only for suppression, it's not for fire prevention. It's not like it's only for union and not for administration. Like the
Right.
peer support team was a mixture of all of these different people, just helping people within the job to with the education and awareness and whatever support they could offer, and maybe directing them to more robust services if they needed, if it was out of their wheelhouse. So it's just about people with, like we talked about, community trying to help each other. I think we're better at it than we've ever been. I think there's more information out there than there ever has been. I think more and more people are working out and being healthy. More people are eating better. People are speaking about it. And I think we need to take more and more ownership of our own wellness. And that's not because, well, I don't think we can have this attitude, well, the job should do it for me.
Right.
The
Oh,
job
no.
should give me everything I need. And if they don't,
Right.
my life problems are their fault.
The job should
Right.
have
Are there things-
resources that they can
Yeah.
get to. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
So
the one thing, like the military itself, as I was leaving, well, this has been around for a while, but they're getting more into it. The Air Force specifically was embedding, for years, they've embedded like therapists in with the special forces. And then they started
Right.
going, well, can we do more of that? And I'm like, yeah, how about embedding them in the damn hospitals? Like, where are those therapists
Right.
that are for the doctors and the nurses and all that we can just kind of sneak off to and go like, hey, you got 10 minutes kind of thing. Where's that
Right.
stuff? Right. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys do any of that up in Canada or.
There may be departments that do that, and that have psychologists paid like as an employee of
Yeah.
the department. There are, third party, we call them employee assistance, employee family assistance plans.
Right.
It's a third party that's contracted for a number of years to provide the services for the member and also for their family members. So not just for the member themselves.
If you get them in immediately, right?
Mhm.
And you get that, so you have a bad fire, shit went downhill, maybe there was
Mhm.
a child involved, whatever it was, right? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
the next day, the day after, 3 days later, whatever it is, if the therapist comes in like, hey, I heard there was a bad day, or the boss says,
Mhm.
hey, that was a bad
Mhm.
event, you need to at least go process it with the therapist, take 30 minutes, whatever it is. Don't
Sure.
you think that
Sure.
there would start being better outcomes? Like we would be able to last longer. Maybe the 5-year career would go
Yep.
10 years.
Yep. So yeah, I just I can now fully form, I think, the thought, and just make sure that I'm what I started to say about, well, you can't point the finger at your employer. So we've had to go through a number of hard times over the past number of years of losing members for various reasons. And I do find it pulls all the walls down, and we're all in it together, experiencing these tragedies of losing people that we love and are worked with and respected. And it makes us take a look at ourselves and take a look at each other. What I've had to come to realize as a peer support team member for a number of years, and still doing the work for people now, just because you don't have a title and doesn't mean you're not doing the work. That's I just kind of see my life and everyone else's life as like a puzzle, right? So your employer is one piece of that puzzle. So how I had to come to this is like, I'm sitting at the funeral, and very often I think we would all feel the responsibility of the loss of that person. Like it was all our fault. If we could have done all these things, this would not have happened. What I'm trying what I'm saying here is that there's a bunch of different puzzle pieces touching that or holding that person together. There's their family, there's their social outside of work community, there's themselves to hold themselves together. There's all these pieces. So what I needed to do to have peace of mind in these tragedies is realize, are we as an employer, is the employer as an employer doing everything that is actually possible for that person? Are we as a community of firefighters or police or medics, are we actually doing everything that we can? But there's a limit to that. There's a limit to what you can do.
Right.
But are you doing it?
Right.
So if you're not doing it, then you better fucking own it and learn how to do that stuff. If the
Right.
employer's not doing it, and there are a lot of employers that have like disrespected or discarded their employees and have need to own that shit.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, to sit there as a firefighter at a funeral and carry the full weight of like this death is my responsibility. I think that's not real.
Right.
It's not fair, and I think we can spiral ourselves. So I would need to be able to know when I'm sitting there that I as a person and then us as a group and then us as a department and as a service did everything we could and everything was available, and we still lost somebody. So at least I can just mourn the loss and the tragedy and the sadness without wearing the shame and guilt because I didn't do what I could have done. I hope that clears that up.
No, it does,
Yeah,
because I think
definitely.
the bottom line is there accountability on both ends of it. I think that's what you detailed out, is that we have an accountability as leadership, as, peer support, administration, to make sure all these resources are available and attainable. And we're encouraging and normalizing that this is a good thing to do. Step one,
Right.
right? And showing no, like, oh yeah, you should go, kind of making a face thing, right?
Hmm.
It
Right.
it really needs to be held sacred and honored. But the other part of it is, if you can only bring the horse to water.
Even at your deepest, darkest, most horrible moments,
Uh-huh.
there is some part that you hold accountability and responsibility for yourself.
Yes.
And then maybe that's a very small portion at that moment, and then everyone else around you can help you expand that.
Yes.
And then when you're at your utmost best, that's when you own the maximum amount of your own accountability and responsibility, and that's when you should also then be trying to then help other people with when you're in that good place. So
Right.
I'm just saying that accountability never goes away. It may change in ratio, but you always also have that personal responsibility and ownership to look at yourself going, what can I still do in this moment? Even though I feel like I have nothing, what can I do? I still have some ownership here. So I think it's about personal ownership, and I think it's about empowering, like and the goal of peer support and all this personal work, not just personal work. So the peer support and supports outside of the person, the job is to slowly build them back up so they're empowered to take control of their life again, right?
Scalability.
Within reason, and then
Hmm.
but if the person themselves is doing all these detrimental things to themselves, no amount of resources
Right.
from the employer are going to help. So
Mhm.
I just want to look at it holistically, like what's reality, right? And then who can we point fingers at? Um, and where does the responsibility lie? And I know like I said, I know there were cases where employers and industries probably still are not giving their people what they need, and they should own that.
Yes.
And I really feel deeply for those people. But I think in an ideal world, we would see where the percentages of responsibility lie, and we would be trying to maximize those.
So so I'm looking at the time here, and we could talk all day about this.
And I will. So you just have to kind of
I
cut it off
I
when
know
you're
I'm
done.
bad too. Leslie's bad too. We're all like, ooh, yeah, it's right up in our wheelhouse, because scalability is a
Mm,
big thing to me. Like, I had
mm,
a service member tell me one time, he says, ma'am, sometimes, he goes, the saying that him and I had was, there's peaks and troughs, and you're going to land in the
mm.
trough. Sometimes you just can't unpack your bags there. And he would
Oof.
say, at the worst, he said, sometimes, he goes, if you can imagine, I could be curled up in a ball, and he's like, and there could be 50 hands around me reaching out, and I can't even raise a pinky. And I'm like, and then at that point, well, we all put our hands in to get you upright, and we hold you till you can put a foot down. And it's exactly what you said. The
Right.
I think that's where leadership doesn't necessarily always understand that, right? I'm sure they're learning and whatnot, but our peers don't necessarily understand that until they get in the middle of that. Is that there is a scalability that you can raise the pinky, you can put a hand down to push yourself up. In the meantime, those resources have to be there to support, and
Mhm,
your goal
mhm,
always is to get a little better. It's like mental rehab, right? It's like slowly
mhm.
getting better and better. So that is a huge, uh, huge.
And it's not just one person's job,
No.
like,
That's what I'm trying to say. I think,
what
yeah, yeah.
Scott said, there's going to be days when your strongest person can't lift that pinky.
Yep.
So, so we have to watch everyone. We have to be a team, and it is the responsibility of the employer to have resources, but then as a team, we need to be watching out for each other.
Mm.
All
I
right.
mean this with the deepest empathy and understanding and compassion of like understanding what it feels like at my core is that feeling that you can't move and
Yeah.
that is not going to end, and it will always be that way. I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just I think just lastly, I would just say that it's really hard to go and see a therapist when you can't get up to brush your teeth. That's really hard to
Yes.
do. You can somehow you can get there. So hopefully, yeah.
Well, that's what I want to segue into. And we're going to go over the hour, but the conversation's too good. And I really don't want to miss it. So, and I know that your podcast is wildly successful. I've listened to it. Really good. If y'all get a chance, listen to Multiple Calls podcast. And it's pretty much on any platform that you listen to podcasts on.
Mm-hmm.
What got you there? Because this is what I want to know. None of this stuff starts because there's a good idea fairy going, hey, I'm going to start Bullets to Bedpans. Well, no, I mean, I had a lot of experience and I realized that we attack this like we're giving out CEUs to people. And I'm like, fuck that. We've got to do it in a way that people understand. So what led to you starting multiple podcasts?
Yeah, so like you said, I think a lot of things come together. So I started listening to a number of podcasts, and I really loved, how articulate they were and how well produced they were, and how much I was learning. And where I moved to, school friends from way back, they live in the same area, and one of them has a studio in his basement. So the universe was kind of like saying, "Hey, by the way, all this is
Nudge, nudge.
available." Right? Nudge, nudge. Like maybe you should give this a try. I'll start with friends and people that I know, and make sure I ask questions and approach it with, as a genuine, authentic person, and not for my ego, and try to tell their story. So, yeah, we do about 2 episodes a month on average. And so I'm grateful for the people that listen. I'm grateful for the team that puts this together. We're really proud of it, and yeah, I appreciate your kind words.
It's a good podcast. And why I like your approach is that there's room for everybody at the table, right? And everybody's going to resonate to different things at different times. And I like your approach because, again, back to the tough plus love, you're talking about firefighter world, you're talking about post-traumatic growth, post-traumatic stress, and you're talking about vulnerability, and you're showing that through the podcast. And that is a big deal for a guy. So you put us in these high adrenaline, fields, and we go, 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 go for 10, 20, 30 years. And then we come out the backside of it and we're just like, damn, what happened? Where did that all go? So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think, like, my whole intention, I really thought that this podcast was going to be like, oh yeah, firefighters do it better because like they're eating salad more often, they're lifting weights, and we're over here with a donut and the coffee and the cigarettes in the hospital. We're sucking it, and right in the first like 20 minutes, I'm like, shit, he just demystified the whole thing. We're all humans, and we're all doing the best we can, and really on levels were similar. Some people
Very
are
much so,
rocking
yeah.
it out at times and some people are just sucking it at times, and in between all that, all of us need to help each other be the best we can be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And just to speak to Jeff quickly, and him and his wife Jessica and their team, there's a documentary coming out called "The Dark Night of Our Soul."
I saw that.
That's about post-traumatic growth. They're part of an endeavor called Citizen Green. So it does focus on military veterans and the use of cannabis as medicinal, and helping them heal and manage. So definitely check that out. Special Forces experience. So just a shout out to all the amazing work. There's a lot of great people that are doing great work. And I think that's, what I'm trying to do is kind of highlight this great work that's out there. Marie Bodine's another one with the cold therapy and cold exposure. She's working with cold culture tubs. And then, we've got New Breath. There's a number of, cold immersion companies out there doing great work and realizing how impactful that is. So yeah, I'm doing my best to highlight these great people and these great teams doing great work, and like you said, providing resources, options, perspective.
Are all your guests, do you keep them in Canada or do you cross borders? Or
No, they've been all across. Yeah, they've been all across the north. Actually, Ricky Nuttall's from the UK. So I have just the one that comes to mind. So I have I'll talk to anybody from anywhere, really.
Yeah.
And this is what's great, right? Like we've never met, and we can just like how amazing of a time this is that we
Yeah.
never would have been connected before. So our community just continues to grow, and we can just cold call each other and say, hey, let's sit down and have a talk. And my day is better now because of having done this with both of you.
Yeah. Just for the audience, just so you guys know, like this, there is some level of preparation, but I'm going to tell you straight up, my level, I keep it minimal for reasons, right? I want to hear the story. I don't want
Mm.
to check out anywhere. I have a squirrel brain. So if I already like know what's going to be said, then my little brain's like grocery list or
Mhm.
something stupid. And so I don't. I'm showing you. You guys can't see this. That's my notes right there. It's on a little like 3x5 card. That's my notes. And I know that if I haven't heard it, I'm going to listen close and it's all just going to happen. And I can talk
I
to
love it.
anybody.
That's a great dynamic to have both of those approaches. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah,
really great for people.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, Leslie, what do you got? Do you have anything here? We'll wind it
No, I
down.
just thank you so much, Scott, for sharing with us your information. And I think that that's just how we do this as a team, is we just share the resources that we have. We're all in it together. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're lovely people. I'm really glad we got connected.
Awesome. Any last thoughts, Scott? Quotes? You're a quote guy. I like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could check out the Instagram page if they want, right? That would be a great way. If anybody wants to reach me, that would be a great way to connect with me. I'm there quite a bit. I'm on there regularly, and I share a lot of content, so it's not just like me and what I think should be out there. I love sharing other people's content and great work. So just please check that out. The podcast has a website, multiplecalls.squarespace.com. They can check that out. There's a resources page with everything hyperlinked. Yeah, just go and investigate. I wrote a couple lists with some help, like 50 rules to the senior firefighter and then 25 rules for the fire service instructor. And I also do a program called the Connected. I mentioned it before, but the Connected Warrior. So it's really about talking about what we've been talking about, that yin yang, tough plus
Right.
love. Like that's
Yeah.
where that all sort of came. But so I'll do webinars now and then about called the Connected Warrior. So if you're interested in that, I can always do it, from anywhere. We can just do it over Zoom, just like this. So if anybody's interested, they can please hit me up. I love talking shop. I love connecting with people. I love feedback, good and bad. I can take professional criticism without taking it personally. So yeah, please reach out and connect in any way you see fit.
All right. All right, everybody. I think this was an awesome conversation. I think that we just keep making awareness and we put a little sass in it because, what's life without a little bit of laughter? We all got to laugh a little. So from everybody over here to all you guys, we hope you had a great day. The rest of the week is awesome for you. If you can like and share and get this out to everybody, we totally appreciate it. Have a great, great week. Peace out.